When was the last time you decided, actually consciously decided, what was going to occupy your mind for the next 10 minutes? Not the last time you decided what to do, the last time you decided what to think about, what to notice, what to let in. If you're having trouble answering that, you're not alone and you're not careless. You're living inside a system built by extremely smart people with a great deal of money on the line, whose job is to make sure that you never quite have to ask that question. So here's the promise of this episode. This isn't really about your phone. Phones are just where the story happens to be visible right now. This is about something bigger and considerably more personal. What happens to a life when other people and other systems get to keep deciding, moment after moment, what enters your awareness? Because life isn't built from the big decisions nearly as much as we like to think. It's built from what you pay attention to, day after day, whether you're meant to or not. This is optimized. So let's talk about the attention economy and the life it's quietly been charging you for. All right, so let's start with a distinction that sounds simple and turns out to matter enormously. There's a difference between a tool that you pick up and a system built to keep you holding it. A hammer doesn't care whether you put it down. Some of the platforms on your phone are designed quite deliberately to care very much. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's a business model. For a huge share of the digital products that you use every day, the actual customer isn't you, it's the advertiser. And what's being sold isn't a product or a service, it's your attention, harvested, measured, and resold. There are some tools that you can choose to open, and maybe you need to do that from time to time. You open something, you check your stats on something, you check an update for something else. And that's something that you're deliberately choosing to do in order to get a result. Then there are feeds that are deciding what you see next. So instead of you consciously making the decisions, it just continually puts in front of you what it thinks you want to see. And by doing that, it sucks you into spending more and more time with it. So it feels really normal to open an app for one thing and then lose track of time and 20 minutes go by and you realize, wow, that was a rabbit hole I went down I was not expecting. We've all been in that situation. We've all had that experience where something grabs our attention and it's compelling enough that we aren't consciously thinking anymore. We're just sort of following along with it. Now, not all technology companies operate identically. Some genuinely optimize for usefulness, not just retention. So this is obviously app specific, platform specific, and company specific. But the specific design mechanics that are set up in such a way that the infinite scroll, the autoplay, the notification badges, the algorithmic feeds that are tuned to what keeps you watching rather than what you choose, that's all deliberate. That's all based on psychology. And it's all stuff that's been studied over and over again and tweaked and optimized until it got to a place where their ability to keep you on the platform for long periods of time was the main currency. And so the deeper issue here is not that these tools exist, it's that very few of us, if any, ever agreed out loud to their terms. We just sort of get sucked into it. The tool wants to be useful for a minute. The system wants to be useful forever. That's a major design difference. So there's a specific mechanism that's worth naming because once you see it, you can't quite unsee it. It's called variable reward. Decades ago, the psychologist B.F. Skinner discovered something strange about how reward shapes behavior. A reward that arrives on a predictable schedule is far less compelling than one that arrives unpredictably. An animal or a person pulling a lever for an unpredictable payout will pull that lever more and stop less than one working for a reward that it can count on. That's the same mechanism behind a slot machine, and it's the same mechanism behind the pull to refresh gesture on your phone. You don't know if the next scroll holds something interesting. That's exactly why you keep scrolling. So this is something that's certainly recognizable if we've ever stepped in front of a casino, because the reason you keep pulling is you tell yourself the very next pull, even if I keep losing, could be a jackpot. It's not, oh, I'm going to get a little bit of my money back. I could make a lot of money. So that is the benefit. And they've done studies with this with animals. When we were training our dog really young and we brought him to an expert dog trainer, one of the things the guy said is you'd use the thing called the jackpot mechanism. And he said, when you're training, you alter the amount of reward you give. So it's one treat. Then every once in a while, there's a handful of treats. That's exactly why. Because the dog knows that, hey, any one of these could be the handful of treats. So I want to keep doing what I'm told and what I'm asked to do so I can get that next jackpot. And so it's super important to understand the psychology and how it's working on us. It's not about being alarmist about anything, but it's super important to at least understand that. So the design in and of itself isn't automatically sinister. There are plenty of genuinely useful tools that use similar hooks. But the content that you choose to seek out versus content that's selected for you to prolong the session, that's completely different because that doesn't involve your awareness. It doesn't involve your intention. It's just there pulling you in. So again, different companies, different platforms vary a lot in how aggressively they lean on this. So it isn't like everybody's nefarious and out to get you, but it is something to be aware of. So think about the last time that you checked something without deciding to check it. Here's the first thing that's worth sitting with. A huge portion of what competes for your attention today isn't competing on the strength of its ideas. It's competing on the strength of its engineering. And once you understand that, the next question isn't, how do I have more willpower? It's, what does it actually cost me when I lose these small moments over and over without noticing? Because it seems a little innocuous on the surface, right? It only takes a minute here, a minute there. One of the movies that I saw that always left a mark on me is The Truman Show. Back in 1998, Jim Carrey is the star. And basically, he's born, I believe, as an orphan, and he's put in a manufactured environment with fake friends, fake people, an entirely fake world that's inside a video studio, essentially, a movie studio. And so all of his life is scripted for him. And he doesn't know anything better about that because it's all designed to keep him satisfied and content and gratified in a way that he won't question anything. Christoph, the show's creator, said, "We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that." And that speaks to exactly what it's all about. Now, here's the part of this that I actually think matters more than the business model. A life is not stolen all at once. Nobody wakes up and hands over a decade. It goes in pieces so small that they don't even register as losses. Checking a phone without deciding to check it. Reaching for stimulation in 3 seconds before a thought could turn into something. Switching tasks right before an idea gets deep enough to be useful. Feeling boredom half a second before it has the chance to produce anything. Being fully physically present somewhere and mentally almost entirely somewhere else. None of those on their own is a tragedy. That's exactly the problem. Each one is too small to notice, too small to regret, too small to even remember by dinner. And that's precisely how a life gets spent without you ever making a single dramatic bad decision. It also lets you avoid anything uncomfortable. If you think about yourself in everyday moments, have you had that situation where you checked something and then 15 or 20 minutes went by, you didn't mean to do that, you only meant to take a minute or two, you don't even realize where it went, but that time is now gone. We've all been in that situation. Have you been in a situation where you were physically present somewhere, but mentally you were thinking about something completely different? Of course. And have you been in a situation where maybe you were contemplating something and maybe it was a little uncomfortable to get in that grime of sorting through things, whether it's feelings that you were trying to sort through or a problem that was challenging that you were trying to work on, and instead reach for a remote or your phone or your computer as something to pacify you so you don't have to go through the pain of thinking? All of those things are perfect examples. And so it's very important that when we are in that situation, we have the awareness, because that in and of itself will allow us to make better choices. So if we reach for a phone at a red light or during a commercial break, we've all been stuck at a red light. The light turns green and the person in front of us is sitting there. 1, 2, 3, 4 seconds. We all know what's happening. They're looking down at their phone. They had 30 seconds at a red light. I can't even wait 30 seconds and stay focused. So they're looking down at their phone. I've seen a lot of people driving looking at their phones. So, it's the phantom check of opening an app, not even remembering, deciding to do it. We sort of just get in this rhythm of, our mind and our body has this muscle memory that, oh, we're going to go check this right now and check that. So we want to think about task switching before a thought gets deep, also, because that's another one that I think is really important. It's uncomfortable sometimes to sit in something where we need to work through it, where we don't have an easy answer, or when it's an uncomfortable subject. And we're constantly surrounded by opportunities to opt out of that and to do something instantly gratifying that doesn't require as much work or effort. And we can kick that can down the road and say, we'll do that later. Right. And so the key is we want to be conscious of that so we can stop that from happening and make those big distinctions, do that real work that's deep and that matters and that's important. Have you ever been in a situation conversely where you were thinking about something and you were starting to get breakthroughs, your mind was really starting, and then something else interrupted you. It wasn't your own doing, but something interrupted you. And then when you try to go back to it, you can't remember exactly where you were. It's super frustrating, but we do that to ourselves all the time without even realizing it. So this can happen in our relationships, it can happen in business, it can happen in our life, it can happen anywhere and everywhere. The problem right now is while distractions have always been around us, when I grew up, we had 4 or 5 TV stations. They were only on certain hours of the day, and there were no cell phones. There were scarcely even any computers until later. And there certainly wasn't any streaming or any of that kind of stuff. Now we have it at our access within seconds every single day. So it's everywhere. It's proliferated into every aspect of our lives. We have access to more content in a day than previous generations had in years. And so the issue isn't just distraction. It's also simply too much to meaningfully absorb. So we have to self-select. None of these moments would make it into your memoir. And that's exactly why they're the ones actually writing your life. There's another movie. I'm a big movie buff, so I like to talk about movies whenever they apply. If you've ever seen the movie Idiocracy, I don't actually love the movie itself, but when it was created, it was laughed off as sort of a joke because it was so far-fetched from what current day reality was. When you look at it now, basically to distill it down, there's a person who's frozen in time and he wakes up way in the future. And in the future life, he's an average guy with average intelligence. He's considered a genius because he knows common sense things that people have already forgotten. Everything is done for them. You sit in a chair, you have a screen in front of you. It gives you whatever kind of food you want, whatever you want to drink, whatever you want to watch, whatever you want to do. You never have to move out of the chair. So people are like mindless zombies just sitting there. And it's obviously an exaggeration. But if you parallel that to the society that we live in today, go to a doctor's office, go to a waiting room somewhere and take a look around. There's no dialogue. Nobody's talking. No one's even reading a magazine anymore. They all have their head down in their phone. And you even see this in social settings. Tons of people around, all in a social setting. Some people are talking, but a lot of people have their head down on their phone the whole time. And it's unfortunate, but it's that instant gratification over and over and over again. So here's the sentence I want to leave this section with. A life is not stolen all at once. It's surrendered in tiny forgettable increments. And forgettable is the operative word because you can't grieve what you don't remember losing. So this is where I want to bring in something that connects directly to the mind and inner life work that we do on the show, because fragmented attention doesn't just cost you time, it changes the texture of your inner life. Start with something researchers call attention residue. When you switch away from a task, especially one that you left unfinished, part of your attention doesn't fully come with you. It stays behind, quietly working on the thing you left. So the new task gets a smaller, more distracted version of your mind than it would have gotten otherwise. Have you been in a situation where you've gotten tons of input and you have a lot of things you know you need to process, but you get to the end of the day and very little of it is settled? You have this on your to-do list to vet or to look at. You have this to research. You have that to consider. You lots of even decisions to be made for things that you already know. All of that stuff gets pushed off if we get too much input because it's overwhelming. It's too difficult to even make decisions. And the difference between feeling informed and feeling like you actually thought about something is profound and certainly important to recognize and understand. Being informed just means you've collected the data. You have all the inputs, you have all the data sources. But actually thinking about something is processing it. It's coming to the conclusion. It's weighing the pros and cons. It's coming to a decision. That's far more powerful ultimately because there's never going to be a lack of inputs. So, a feed that's built from other people's highlight reels is going to quietly recalibrate what feels normal or sufficient in your own life. You're basically a voyeur. For me, I could never quite understand what the obsession is with why people want all the ins and outs of what, the Kardashians do on a daily basis. I literally couldn't care less. If they fell off the face of the earth tomorrow, it would make no difference to me. But some people are so obsessed with it that they spend their entire life living vicariously through, and that's just one example. There are lots of these. But anytime that we're so invested in other people's lives that we're hanging on every decision they make and what they name their kids and what their relationships are like, we're not living our own life. We're vicariously trying to live through somebody else. And there's nothing wrong with entertainment. But it's important to be focused on our own lives and focus on the things that we have control over and that matter to us ultimately. So, how do you tell the difference between a thought that's genuinely yours and one that was handed to you by whatever you scrolled past an hour ago? It's pretty difficult. But in this way, we need to always bring ourselves back to that equilibrium where we start thinking about the screen of, does this even matter? Is there any relevance here? So that's the super important part about it. And none of this is about our value as a person. It's not a judgment. It's the focus on raising awareness so we're able to make better conscious decisions about how we use our time and we're better able to run our own lives instead of having them run for us. Because there's a subtler cost here, and it's actually about who's actually doing the thinking. So none of this means that something's wrong with you. It means that your inner life needs a certain kind of settled attention to actually function, to notice, to integrate, to sit with a feeling of instead of immediately reaching past it. And that kind of attention has gotten harder to come by, not because we've gotten weaker, but because the conditions around you have gotten louder. And this is a skill like anything else. It takes practice. Self-awareness in particular requires something that the attention economy is not interested in giving you: unstructured time with your own mind. So, attention as the real unit of time. Here's the reframe at the center of this episode, and it connects directly to the time, rhythm, and rest work on the show. Clock time and live time are not the same thing. You can technically possess an hour and never actually inhabit it. Sit at dinner with someone you love while your mind runs a loop about a work problem, and you were there on the calendar. You are not there in a way that will show up in your memory of your own life. Attention management asks a different question than time management. Time management asks, how do I fit more in? Attention management asks, where am I actually when I'm here? There's research suggesting something worth taking seriously here. Across a large sample of people tracked in real time throughout their days, minds wandered, thinking about something other than the task at hand, nearly half of the time. And that mind wandering, regardless of what people were actually doing, was associated with lower reported happiness than simply being present with the activity in front of them, even when the activity itself was mundane. That's powerful. So think about this across all the aspects of your life. And this is going to show up differently in different domains because in your relationships, there might be some things that you sort of do on autopilot instead of being very present. The quality of your rest. Maybe your mind is elsewhere, so you aren't really resting, even though you're laying down or you're supposed to be resting. If you're scrolling through a phone, that is not rest. If you're having something give you sensory input, it's not rest. Creative or deep work, and the sheer felt pace of life, right? Sometimes you're just technically off, you're not actually resting, but you just don't feel right about things. It just doesn't sit. You're not able to focus the way that you should be. So boredom and unstructured time aren't empty. And this is where a lot of people make mistakes. We put a badge of courage and honor on being constantly busy and overwhelmed. And it's almost like there's something wrong with you if you have unstructured time that's empty. It's actually the opposite. That's where a lot of the mind's integrative creative work happens, precisely because nothing's directing it. So it has an opportunity to do that. And again, we want to distinguish rumination here, which is a stuck loop, of worry over and over and over again, where you're not processing, you're just replaying. That's not the same as genuine reflection, where we're curious about what we're struggling with. It's structured attention toward our own experience and trying to figure out what the answer is, what the best solution is. So they can look similar from the outside, but they function very differently. So keep note of that. Rumination will keep you in a negative emotion loop and it never gets anywhere. It just keeps replaying the same way. When you're actually focused on something, you'll process through it. So the goal was never a life with more hours in it. Nobody's getting that. The goal is a life with more of you actually in the hours that you already have. So if attention is the actual unit of time, the thing that actually determines whether an hour was lived or just spent, then the question worth asking isn't how to get more hours. It's how to get more of yourself back into the ones you've already got. Reclaiming attention without turning it into another performance. Now, I want to be careful here because this is exactly the point where a lot of content like this collapses into another 5-step system. Delete the apps, get a flip phone, do a digital detox, feel guilty until you comply. That's not what this is. You can't opt out of a structural cultural problem through sheer personal discipline. And I'm not going to pretend that turning off notifications solves something built into the entire architecture of modern digital life. This also isn't about achieving perfect monk-like focus. It's not realistic, and honestly, it's not even desirable. A life with zero mind wandering would be a strange, joyless life. But what I want to offer instead is a different orientation, a few honest questions, not a formula. So we want to talk about reclaiming framework as a genuine explorable ideas rather than a checklist. So start with noticing before restricting, right? Before changing anything, spend a few days simply noticing where your attention defaults to when nothing's directing it. Then we want to think about the difference between chosen attention and captured attention. And when you're able to name that, that's a huge difference. That in and of itself, being able to name that in the moment is the skill. When you can recognize when you're being hijacked and when you're consciously making the choice, that's a massive breakthrough. And we want to protect transitions also, those small gaps between things, the walk to the car, a few minutes before a meeting. So those are some of the most quietly valuable unscheduled real estate in your day. I'll tell you, when I drive in the car, I almost never have the radio on. Used to have it on all the time, music, talk shows, sports radio. Now I use that as my thinking time because it's the one time I'm alone in my own space. And if I'm not constantly bombarding my senses with other inputs, it allows me to process things. So deliberately reintroduce boredom on your commute. You know what I mean? When you're in a line, when you're in a waiting room, there's small, low stakes practices in tolerating unfulfilled space, and you'll be amazed the difference that it makes. Environmental design is super important as well because we can't willpower our way through everything. What we want to do is make the default easier. So, what's actually within reach when your hand goes looking for stimulation? And if you're able to avoid the things that instantly sort of pacify you, that is a good step toward getting where you want to be. The attention audit is another thing that you should do as a values based, not a guilt based. It's not how much screen time that I have, but does where my attention actually go match what I say matters to me? That's super important. And we don't want to make this into a new competition. There's not a scoreboard. There's no streaks. There's no shame spiral. There's no bad days, right? It's just an awareness thing that will help you live better. So, none of what I'm about to say is a rule. Think of it more as a set of questions worth carrying around. This isn't about controlling your attention perfectly, it's about having more say in where it goes than you currently do. So, here's one thing that you can actually do starting today, and it's not a system, it's just a single practice. Sometime in the next 24 hours, pick one ordinary moment of waiting, a line, a red light, the kettle boiling, the load screen, and let it be boring. Don't reach for anything, don't fill it. Just notice what your mind does when nothing's telling it what to do next. That's the whole exercise. It's small on purpose. You're not trying to fix your entire relationship with attention in one red light. You're just proving to yourself once that you could survive an unfilled minute and noticing what shows up when you do. So let's bring this all the way back. Attention is finite. There's only so much of it in a day and in a life. What you repeatedly give it to doesn't just fill your time, it shapes your experience, your memory, and over years, your actual sense of who you are. Not because any single moment matters that much on its own, but because moments compound. Life is just a very long accumulation of where your mind happened to be. None of this is about achieving total control. Total control isn't the goal, and it was never available to you or to anyone else. The goal is agency, having a real say more often than not in what gets the best of you. Because here's the quiet truth underneath all of it: protecting your attention isn't a productivity tactic. It is, in a very real sense, protecting your life. Since your life, in the end, is made up of nothing else but what you paid attention to while you were here. Your attention is the only material of your life is actually made of. Everything else is just what you built with it.